The next panel discussion is, of course, about the biggest mistakes in deep tech startups. I've talked to the panelists. They will reveal names, call out the ones who made those mistakes. It will be harsh, right? Exactly, Eva. For that, we need the best moderator for this talk, and I would like to welcome on the stage, and I hope you help me welcome her on the stage. She's the editor-in-chief of your favorite startup news source, Labs of Latvia, and she's an entrepreneur in her own right with the business newsletter Finday.lv, Miss Eva Treja. Welcome, Eva.
Thank you.
But you will not be alone. You will.
Really?
You won't have to speak to me. That would be boring. Let's welcome on the stage. He runs by many titles. We love to see him here again. Healthcare innovator, ecosystem builder, startup mentor, purpose-driven leader, growth strategist, health equity advocate, Mr. Darren Wilson. She's the CEO at TechChill, one of this region's key startup ecosystem hubs, Miss Anja Mažgaile. And he's the co-founder of Terra Waste, innovation lead at Helve, and acting CEO of the Baltic Sustainability Award, Mr. Kristaps Tsirulis. Let's have a good one.
Thank you, Artis. Well, congratulations to all of you. You have made it till the final stage of this event. And yeah, we all wait for startup pitch competition, I believe. But let's be honest, now they are successful. But what will happen in a couple of years? Well, at least some of them will fail, right? But how many of you have failed in the business? Raise your hand. Woohoo! Pretty nice amount of people. So let's give all of you a round of applause for being honest and for having courage to say that. And actually, this panel is about really the courage and probably also the perception that failure is something bad. Actually, it's not. It's just an experience, just a part of life. Take it or leave it, right? Did I raise my hand? I don't know, but I also have a failure story. I used to work in startup, by the way, together with a co-founder who is now one of the most successful Latvian startups, I would say. And we did a startup when actually the term startup was not so popular and known, and we even raised an investment, 50K we got, but we soon, I would say, if I remember correctly, about in half a year, we closed our business as we understood that our product won't live long as the market was not suitable for that. And yeah, but what I learned from that is that I really understood how the startup works. How the team works, what we have to do to raise money, how we develop product. So you all raised hands, right? So you have all failed. Can you share some main insights of these failures? What have you learned from them? Who wants to start?
I think you have to be brave to do anything new. And of course, if somebody would say, you know, the thing that I've done before, I will fail, I would never start. But always from the process, you take away these valuable insights. And the next time you do anything new, you just do it more with a calm consciousness. And you are ready maybe to, you're not that naive anymore, for sure.
So this was your takeaway?
Mine takeaway.
Yeah, okay.
I can go again. So for those that don't know me, I'm Darren, and my background has been predominantly corporate. And actually in corporate, we do have failures as we've gone to try to adopt the startup environment. So we actually even introduced the fuck-up nights in our corporate culture so we can talk about failures. And yeah, definitely have countered many of them. Our failures are the kind of failures that hit the news when a drug fails, so that's the kind of stuff that you you're not too happy about. But even for myself recently, I play a big role in trying to do change in the ecosystems. And in Slovakia, I was trying very hard to set up a health innovation ecosystem. And I got so far, and then I just hit the bureaucracy and the mindset and people trying to capitalize on the initiative, and I eventually just had to let it go. So unfortunately, a little bit of a failure for me on that one, but the initiative now is still running, just in a different way than we intended. And these things happen when you try to do something different.
Christophs?
Yeah, I would agree to Anni that it's basically any failure is kind of good because you have a load of experience, and then afterwards, in the next venture, you will always be more wiser. You again will make a lot of mistakes, and there will be errors, but you will end up in the better place because of the experience you had before. So that's my kind of main takeaway from all my huge mistake experience.
But what about deep techs? Is there something special about failing with your deep tech startup? Christoph? Darren, you probably work more with...
I can start, and then I would say most kind of common issue and mistake is that you think that your technology discovery will change the world, and it can maybe at some point, but the problem is that you need to convince a lot of people in between the success and the starting point. And you need a lot of money. And if we look on Latvia's example, we don't have enough money. We don't support startups in a way that it really accelerates development, especially when we talk about deep tech. We have a lot of money in science, in a kind of academic phase, and we have some money in later stages, but in between, when you start the company itself, that's the issue where you don't have really funding to build something tangible and kind of force yourself to the next phase and level. That's, I think, is the core issue. The money is the issue why you fail.
What about other opinions? Why deep techs fail?
Go ahead.
Well, as deep tech founders, a lot of times are scientists. Usually the ideas and startups are born in a lab and not precisely in a market. So do you evaluate and validate your idea fast enough with the market, with a potential customer? And that maybe is one of the key differences with SaaS startups, that the ideas are born and startups are launched in the market, and you get the immediate feedback on the first day. You know, are you getting engaged early enough with your end user?
Darren?
For me, so my experience in this has been through the Healthcare Lab, a startup accelerator that I founded over 4 years ago for Central Eastern Europe. And it's a mixed bag between some deep tech and also non-deep tech, so I have to speak in this perspective. And on reflection, about 70 to 80% of these startups don't exist anymore. And when I reflect back to some of the reasons why, some of them are really simple. Actually, it comes down to team, the initial team composition, not having the right people at the very beginning. So yes, maybe sometimes too technical, but then lacking the clinical expertise that might be needed. The other element was just because they're moving into new areas, not understanding the regulatory pathways and the barriers that are in front of them, and therefore moving forward in pursuit of science, but not shaping or getting the market ready around the science. So you have to take that definitely in perspective. And the other element too is on the evidence, because unfortunately it takes time to generate the evidence, so there's a lot of theoretical before you get to the realistical, and this does require the long funding pathways, absolutely. And where I saw a lot of them actually fail is their ability just to even communicate what they're doing and why it's so important and why the reason to believe. So this is really important when you're first starting off and reflecting on that more, and I'm talking more early stage, but those are experiences that I recall from the Healthcare Lab Accelerator.
Kristaps, you wanted to add something?
No, I totally agree. I just want to add that above all, the team, when you understand that, okay, you are missing some kind of expertise, and essentially the problem in the early stage is that you need the money to really expand that team, to expand that expertise. And if, as example, government don't support in that phase, then basically you are stuck and you die. As Darren already said, a huge percentage of cool discoveries and innovations which could be applied to real life kind of applications just die and stay in the universities only because there's a lack of real strategic funding in these type of deep tech ventures.
Okay, but if I'm a startup founder, what is the list? I have decided that I won't fail. I will learn from all those experiences. What's the list I should like check? Okay, money, team, what else? What should I have?
Well, you should have an understanding of your market, what you're going to, who's going to pay for it, what's the market viability, and I do think that needs to come at the very beginning. So you have to match that to your science, your scientific innovation. It helps to, from the investor standpoint, it helps to bring them on board. And then it's not just team, and you're absolutely correct that the challenge is getting the money to have the right people on your team, but there are alternative solutions to this, and you're going to have to be a little bit creative. So there is the opportunity of getting yourself involved in an innovation ecosystem if one exists in your country. That should give you access at least to the academia, but also to the corporates, and look for maybe support from the corporate element. Yep. Sometimes that's something you have to navigate in order to at least get some expertise in. You can also set up, at the very beginning, set up your advisory at the very beginning. Find key opinion leaders in your area. They might not be ready. You don't have to necessarily pay them right away. You can also set up a 2% equity off of your advisory board or other means to get them involved. But if your idea is really cool, the innovation is cool, they can see the potential, there's that element that I would offer is a way to help to shore up your success potential and build your champions early on so that as you progress, you have people that will actually take your message forward to the bigger ecosystems, to the other countries, at the academia level, at the business corporate level. But these are some things you need to think about as you're starting off. Just don't go alone. I think that's the biggest thing to avoid. People that go alone and think, I know how to do it, or I know the market, doctors don't know this, I know better than the doctor. If you're thinking this way, then you're putting yourself at risk. So you're going to have to open yourself up a little bit. At least that's what I've seen as some perspectives.
I agree. Just to add that the most important part, I would say, and most kind of less money you need to invest in that is the advisory board. Really, in the first day, just understand what is your kind of strength and then the weaknesses, and just find the people who can support you, help you, and really give you the knowledge and expertise to move that to the next level. Otherwise, you will always have gaps, and you always will, at some point, in some cases, will fail. And if you don't have runaway enough and patience enough, you will be one of the 80–90% who are failing. Advisory board is the most important check. If you have it, you will maybe succeed.
So basically, Ani, I think they are talking about what you mentioned initially, right? This community.
Yep.
How to build your community for your startup? Where to go? Conferences, meetups, I don't know, science cafeterias, co-working spaces.
So the first thing is to cross the border from the lab to the real world. And that means in many things. That means to find the market, also advisory and the team, and then whatever next, maybe of course investor. But it's also, I understand that the scientists, founders, they are so passionate about their technology, and it's amazing to love the science. But how will you bring this message across, and they are so busy in their work that I believe it can be quite hard to navigate around and see all the opportunities. We still don't have this button when you open the actual web page, what should a deep tech startup do first? So that's definitely going and talking to people around. And just actually, a few days ago, I had a nice conversation with a very active investor who wants to help their dual-use startup, and the startup founders are so busy there. So the investor actually is going around and having these chats. Okay, they're talking to Leah, they're talking to startup associations. Where do you go? Where can you get grants? Where can you get free advices, or where to go next to the Europe? So it's surrounding yourself with different expertise.
But if we talk about scientists and deep tech startups, are they really differs from usual tech startups in the sense of this community building, or is it just somehow the perception that scientists is just sitting in the lab? What's the real life? Are they really different from other startup
They're
founders?
still people.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that. They're still people. They're not really different. They just maybe see things in a different perspective. But that's why, and I agree with you and advocate, we have to build the communities, build the tribes around this, even if it's starting small. So I think we were inspired yesterday with the bioreactor group, where they're doing the nonprofit to bring all the everybody kind of working in biotech together in Latvia and taking that into other countries. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But when I was there, I was like, okay, you have this part, but there's a missing part. How do we get you guys exposed to the corporates, right? How do we get the corporates to see your brilliance and bring them here and create even a stronger community? What could be next? I just think we have to think this way a little bit more. When I reflect, there's a great example here in Europe and Finland in the Helsinki hospital system. It's called Cleaver Health. Here, it's a great example of how you can take academic IP. So the way it works there is that the clinicians start with what they see as unmet needs in their hospital system. They formulate the problem. They put the problem out there to a cohort of their PhDs and students, but also to the corporates and also to other startups. And they ask who wants to work on this. And their ecosystem is combined between the public-private partnership. And their whole focus is to help to take this academic IP, formulate it, and then commercialize it, eventually moving those companies outside of Finland into the broader market. And this just has a win-win effect, because obviously they're increasing the quality of the science and the medical education in their local economy. They're attracting investors. They're putting a spotlight on this, and building marketplace. The downside is that Cleaver Health doesn't necessarily work with the next innovation ecosystem, or the next innovation system doesn't work with the next one. And so these little beautiful spotlights that are in Europe are not connected. And I think that's a shame. That's something we need to address. And if we do this better, then this conversation about deep tech failure won't be as serious, because we'll actually have the right kind of communities with the right capabilities to give a better chance for success. And this is what's really needed within the European Forum. The mini models of this is Israel is a great example, or even Singapore in how they work. And the reason why is that really fast regulatory marketplaces, government-backed initiatives, and then the integration between the regulatory person, the corporates, the academia, the hospitals, as an example, because I speak from the healthcare perspective. But putting them all together in the same coexisting, actually Singapore has this methodology in their country. These are the kind of things that work, because then you're shoring up the different scientist individual with the right kind of people around them. And I think we just have to think this way. These problems can be solved.
Kristaps, what's your...
I agree totally that in Europe we have a huge problem in many levels that we are totally disconnected from each other. The countries is disconnected, at least if we talk about the deep tech startups, not just science in kind of academic point of view. And, even internally, in Latvia, example, we are totally disconnected. There is a group there, group there, group there, and nobody is essentially works together fully. And I think that's kind of the bad side of any venture you are building, that you can't fully be kind of in a good mindset only because you have so much things to manage and there's no support to really accelerate that.
But who should take a lead on creating those communities, locally, internationally, Europe?
But I just want to continue about the failure overall, because the conversation has to be changed. Even a few years ago, the failure was still so talked negatively, and it just brings more stigma around it. And what is stigma? It just leads to fear, and it leads to just being afraid to start anything new. But we as community builders have to change this conversation, that these failures that most of us have had, they bring us this more strength and more kind of vision for the future, which of course is still lacking in the maybe bigger population, because I think we should highlight that not always the team has failed. Not always it's the not being an expert in some fields. It's so many things together that you also say. It's timing, it's lack of capital, even in a lot of fields it can be regulation restrictions. So it's just to not talk about failure as you have to be embarrassed, and because it's just, then you stagnate. Because now, so the ones who are well connected with better understanding how the web works with corporates, venture capital, institutions are the ones who most definitely have failed at least once.
True.
Because now you talk very smart, but because you have failed.
That's true. That's true.
So we can sit here being experts, but it's just part of to be a human and to start to navigate around, because the people actually want to help each other, and I don't think we are that decentralized. I think there are the ones who want to build this together. I think the failure is still part of the process to find your next big thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree totally, and I agree that we talk maybe too not fully open and transparently about the failures, from what you can learn something. But I still think that we are still disconnected internally, especially when we talk about the deep tech. Startup ecosystem maybe is good kind of connector, especially textual, startup house, all these kind of initiatives, that's cool. But deep tech, it's disconnected. Universities doing something, startup ecosystem doing something, then there's the funds or accelerators which doing something, everyone is doing something, and only connection is basically this event. Anything else is just noise, which is not helping to those startups evolve, essentially.
Actually, I really liked your point about this, that sometimes we should think of that our state have failed, or even Europe have failed, because the huge startup or with the huge potential, some scientific idea cannot make it due to regulations, and it is especially important in context of deep techs, right? This is Kristaps, what you are talking about. Darren, you also said that regulations, for example, in Europe is...
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's also not failure either, because there's lots of success that come from Europe also. I think we
Yeah,
have
sure.
to, so we have to look at it from that.
When we talk about who is responsible, well, sometimes it is not just a bad team or
not at all. No, no, no. I mean, I think it's a great conversation to have, and in all transparency, I think deep tech here is a great example of bringing this topic together. And this is where sometimes this starts.
Yeah.
I noticed when I look through the list of attendees, it's still predominantly Latvian attendees here. So I think there's an opportunity of how can we bring more of Europe to Riga for this kind of event. That in itself will help to build better communities, better connection. So you already have a starting point. I think this is a positive thing. So work with what you have and build the community. And then the other part is that like your positive, optimistic approach. It's mindset that we have, and we just have to find the like minds out there that really see the value of the connections and building up. There's a lot of these individual initiatives, but we just have to start connecting them together a little bit better. So it's step by step. I do think, as I've been in Europe, things are getting better, and we are progressing, and the conversations are starting to happen at the ground level and at the political level, which it needs to. It's just that there's a lot more in front of us that has to happen to kind of make us be in a position where we can really play in a great way against other competitive markets like the United States or like China. But we have the talent here. We have brilliant people here. It's just a matter of now putting this all into good effect.
And those conversations are really important now when it seems like Europe will be, in some sense, left alone, right? We will have to...
Well, Europe has to learn to stand on her own anyways, so that's important. The geopolitical nature has rapidly changed. So when we are building technologies, we do have to make sure that those technologies are accessible locally in case the world dynamics change. This becomes very, very important. But I think this is a great time for us to really step back and look at our current ecosystem of Europe and what are the levers now that we need to start to move around and change to get us to this level. The interest of Europe to be competitive in innovation is there. So that's the starting point. It's just that Europe takes a long time to get anything done, to get the policy in place to make the change. Unfortunately, we see this already in my space, the European health data space, an excellent initiative to ensure that health data can be transferably shared across EU member states. We need this for our AI technology. We have to have the accessibility. But just even getting the policy in place has taken now 4 or 5 years. And even then, when it comes into place, it's a recommendation for the member state. Yeah. And we know most member states, depending on their politics, some will choose to adopt it and others will choose to ignore it. In some cases, because, I hate to say it, but in some cases it brings too much transparency to the system, and some member states aren't ready for that transparency. These are just like the challenges that Europe has at present, but I think the geopolitical nature is putting more pressure on the environment to help to maybe clean up some of these roadblocks and get us moving in the right direction. At least I really hope this is the case.
But there is a sense that it is happening at the moment.
No, it is happening. Absolutely it is. But it just needs to happen faster. And this is also where I advocate for deep tech failure or startup failure. And my experience in the European venue is that the academia here is brilliant, but it's very slow and meticulous and strives for perfection. And we have to find a place that you allow that to happen to a certain extent, but then we need to move, and we have to pivot, and we have to look at how we're bringing this innovation to the marketplace vis-a-vis our competition in the US or our competition in China or other countries. Because as much as the beauty of the academic science persists in Europe, by the time you finally get your company, the market's not there, is going to be there for you, because all the other fast movers got out in front of you. So this competitiveness in the mindset of how we bring deep tech forward, I would advocate we should take a look at that and think about what can we do more to bring the business modeling, the commercialization, the regulatory pathway planning, all of this at the forefront of the ideation of getting deep tech going. And if we do this better, I do think we set European deep tech startups up better for success. But there's smart people in this room, there's smart people in the country, and there's smart people in the European nation, and this is something I strongly believe that we can solve if we put our heads together on it.
Okay, but how can we normalize this failure? Should we talk more publicly about that? Should we share more stories about that? What's the solution?
I think there has been a lack of there was hesitation of openly talking what did not work, because it's important to understand why we failed, what didn't work, or it was whatever mistakes we mentioned already. So keeping it a secret, then you just build your own you are more embarrassed yourself, and then you take all the fault on yourself. I think to exchange the reasons and the problems and be open can take off the pressure from it. Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think that if we openly will share why we failed, what was the reason, what we did wrong and what was right, then it will give a lot of power to really build something from the beginning. And I see that in very kind of local, individual level, when you speak with the startup founder to founder and kind of explain what the fuck up happened last year and how we kind of pivoted or we changed something. And then you kind of bring this collective knowledge and wisdom how to kind of move forward. Otherwise, it's just, cool, we fundraise 5 million, cool, we did this, or we are saying in Latvia that we are deep tech nation, which, again, the question in the core is, from what perspective we're looking that we are deep tech nation, if the startups are failing.
And if we come back to the founders level, what's your takeaway, how to understand when it's the time to admit that I have failed and move further? How can I recognize this moment? Because as you said, it is so hard. Startups love what they are doing. They are really passionate about that. But how to know when to stop?
Maybe it's not stopping. So I think I totally agree with you. Like, failure is cliche learning. And it's an iterative learning process. I mean, this is all about the point of creation. And so I think the founders that truly fail are the ones that keep absolutely persistent on their ideation and overlook all the warning signs or issues that are really putting them to a point of absolute failure. The founders that do really well are the ones that are kind of taking this noise in, getting the understanding, learning from the failures, but then pivoting, adapting, recreating, repurposing, and continuing. I think this is a bit of the secret sauce for some of the founders that make it through. And that's normal in the creation process. You start off on the one path, and invariably you're going to find yourself going down the other. So this is just the way of the innovation is, and we just have to appreciate that. It's a creative process. We have to encourage that creativity to happen, and when we call it quits, I mean, I think it's like if you haven't actually then pivoted in some way and you've gotten to the very, very end, and we didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we failed. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, you're going to have to step back and be reflective and find out where the paths were in front of you that you ignored and how you could have done things differently. And then we learn from that, right? People that go through that, they're the reason they're a founder in the first place. Invariably, they're a founder in the second place, and invariably they get their success coming through that learning process.
And just to add one additional thing, I think that the one additional thing in the checklist which you mentioned in the beginning, in deep tech you need to understand that you need a lot of patience. It will take 5, 7, or even 10 or more years to kind of go and become as an operational business in reality. And that's the one of the issue we don't tell fully. Maybe some mentors is doing that and kind of trying to explain. But in the beginning, scientists think that, okay, I will launch this cool discovery, and in 2-3 years, because SaaS is doing, as Annie mentioned, kind of right day one, traction is there, and something happens with the deep tech, you just really need to nail down and understand that 5 years I will not earn nothing, essentially. I don't have salary, or maybe you will be lucky and fundraise something, and you really will need to kind of push it forward and pivot, while you will find a connection which, okay, this is working.
Also, it's about, to look for these investors who understand deep tech better, because the cycles are much longer.
Very long.
And those are the ones and most of the time it comes from their own experience in the field, so they will be more patient. They will give you this survival budget that you can work with 5 years and build your company. So it's definitely going for investments fast enough, so you have those 5 years.
Yep.
Otherwise, you will do everything right and you will not succeed still, and that happens a lot of times.
That's, I think, is the most crucial kind of reason why someone is failing.
But you all have seen a lot of startups. Do you have already some red flags that you recognize that most probably this won't work?
If the founder is more excited about the technology itself than to the impact, the real impact, I think that can be a red flag. That means it can be disconnected with the market or with the user.
For me, what I see often, and it's related to actually what you're saying, is this over-promising on it. I mean, we have a classic example coming out of the UK with Babylon, which went to over $1 billion and over-promising on their AI capabilities, but it wasn't really adjusted to the real-world settings and the clinical evidence. And a company that became what was going to be the amazing AI billion-dollar company crashed to nothing, basically. And it's no different at that scale to what I see also early on. Some people, they're just a little bit too upfront, and we have to be careful of that. And I think that's what gives deep tech a little bit of a bad name. And there's some big case studies also from the U.S. in this nature. So I think here it's about if they really have an understanding of how they're going to be able to match their technology to real-world evidence, and they have a plan to prove this, and they're able to back it up, then the credibility of that deep tech is that much more stronger, and this is going to be very appealing to investors who might be a little bit apprehensive of going that distance in deep tech just because of what they've seen with some of the other case studies. So I think this one is mission critical and a red flag. My other red flag, again, always relates to the initial team also, and is the right team composition there, and do they understand do they know what they don't know? Right? This is really important. Do they give this perception they know what they don't know, and therefore you can have trust that they're going to fill these gaps along their journey? They maybe not right away, but they have this sense of it. That one is also really important. Sometimes people some of the founders it's just such a new experience for them that they're so linear that they're missing the big picture of things, and I think that is a big red flag also.
I'm just adding to what Darren's saying, that a lot of companies in healthcare working, maybe when the direct client will be a clinic or hospital, they need to have this huge investment front forward. So that means you have to have a right scientist behind the technology, but there has to be equally business side, because the investment's you have to have it a lot. So strong business team behind it who is ready to pivot and actually take the feedback in and to understand where's maybe problems, because I think those both sides are very important to actually not even move on faster, but move on, period.
To add, the private sector is one of the main drivers. Is startup will fail or live forward. In Latvia, I think we lack any private involvement in startup lives. in many in kind of tangible way, not just saying, okay, we will let you something pilot, but really invest in that and support that startup and kind of give the money needed to make these tests. In Latvia, we don't have that culture, and that's the huge issue. In other countries, there is this, as we discussed before, ecosystems and collectives where huge corporates are connecting to the and even building their internal ecosystems, but in Latvia we don't have that culture, and that's the missing part. If we look from how we can accelerate here to whole Europe, any deep tech as a startup, not as a just great science behind it.
To wrap this all up, I would like to elaborate a bit on the point that Darren said about this talking publicly, right? On the one hand, we need to tell those stories. On the other, it can sometimes work against you because there are also those bad stories that a lot of general public doesn't understand and don't want to dig deeper to understand, right? But I think that the main takeaway is that we have to talk. We have to talk about what we are doing. We have to talk about our successes, about our failures, and still, I think that we will learn only from our mistakes, right? So we have to be really open to that and recognize them and just have a strength to move forward. And that is my main takeaway from that. And thanks to Latvian Investment and Development Agency for giving this stage to failure stories, to success stories, and actually the place to meet where we also talked about the strength of community and how it is important for deep techs to move forward. So thank you, and let's give a stage to the best startups in this contest this year.
And a round of applause to our panel and Eva for moderating. Job well done. Thank you. Thank you very much.